"Sign here and disappear from our lives," her mother-in-law ordered as the entire family laughed. Amaka signed in silence. They didn't know that with that signature, they had just lost everything. "You don't even deserve to sit in that chair." Mama Ayo Montero's words cut through the opulent living room air like an invisible knife. The elder woman, with her coral bead necklace and rigid posture, looked down at the young woman seated at the polished Iroko wood table, as one might eye a stain on a fine tablecloth. Amaka Obi did not look up. Her hands rested on the divorce papers, still, firm, though inside she felt her world crumbling piece by piece. She could hear the suppressed laughter all around her. She could feel the stares laden with contempt piercing her back. She could smell the expensive imported champagne they had served as if it were a celebration, because for the Montero family, that was exactly what it was, a party. The party of getting rid of her. "Hurry up," Kunle Montero's voice, her husband, or rather her soon-to-be ex-husband, came from somewhere behind her. "We have a dinner reservation, and we don't want to be late because of you." A dinner reservation. Amaka absorbed those words like a punch to the gut. They had been married for years. They had built a home together. They had shared entire nights talking about the future, about children, about growing old together. And now, for him, signing the end of all that was simply a formality before heading out for dinner. "Leave her," Kunle, Tola Montero, Kunle's younger sister, interjected, leaning against the wall with a champagne flute in her hand and a smile that reeked of satisfaction. "She's probably calculating how much she can squeeze out of us before signing. That's what people like her do. People like her." Amaka knew that phrase well. She had heard it since the first day she stepped into the Montero estate. People like her, without a prominent family name, without inherited wealth, without a powerful lineage. People who, according to the Montero family, were only good for one thing: to be used and discarded when they were no longer convenient. Chief Segun Montero, the family patriarch, stood at the other end of the table, observing the scene with his arms crossed. He was an imposing man who had built the Montero conglomerate, a diversified group of companies spanning real estate, oil and gas, and telecommunications that dominated the region. He rarely spoke, but when he did, everyone listened. And at that moment, his silence was more eloquent than any words. "Look, dear." Mama Ayo approached Amaka, leaning slightly so only she could hear, though she spoke loudly enough for everyone to catch. "We're doing you a favor. You could have left with nothing, but my son, who is too generous for his own good, insisted on giving you something. So sign, take your pittance, and go back to wherever you came from." The word pittance was uttered with such profound contempt that it seemed to poison the air. Amaka finally looked up and met her mother-in-law's eyes. There was no hatred in Amaka's gaze, only an infinite sadness mixed with something Mama Ayo could not interpret. "Mama Ayo," Amaka spoke in a calm voice. "I just wanted to be clear that I never asked for anything from this family, not when I married and not now." "Please." Tola let out a burst of laughter from her corner. "If you hadn't wanted anything, you wouldn't have married my brother. We all know why you were here." Kunle approached the table, standing next to his mother. There was something in his expression that Amaka would remember forever. It wasn't exactly cruelty. It was indifference, the worst form of contempt, as if she were an administrative problem that needed to be resolved before moving on to more important matters. "Amaka, let's be practical," Kunle said in a calculated voice. "You've been delaying this for weeks. My lawyers drafted the terms. You receive a reasonable financial compensation. You move out, and everyone moves on with their lives. Reasonable compensation." Amaka looked at the documents before her. The amount they offered was insultingly low. After years of marriage, after having given up her career to dedicate herself to the home Kunle asked her to build, they offered her an amount that would barely cover a few months' rent in a modest flat. "It's more than you deserve," Mama Ayo declared. "Be grateful, my son has a good heart." Amaka looked at Kunle, searching his eyes for any trace of the man she had fallen in love with. The man who promised he would always protect her, that she was the most important thing in his life, that he would never let anyone hurt her. But that man had disappeared long ago, replaced by this stranger who looked at her with the same coldness with which he would review a bank statement. "Is this truly what you want, Kunle?" Amaka asked, her voice barely a whisper. "What I want is for this to be over once and for all," he replied without hesitation. It was at that moment that the living room door opened, and Barrister Adiola, the Montero family lawyer, entered. He was a slender man of precise movements, carrying a leather briefcase and an expression of absolute professional self-importance. "Excuse the delay," he said as he placed additional documents on the table. I had to add some confidentiality clauses. Confidentiality? Amaka frowned. Standard in these cases, Barrister Adiola explained without looking at her, as if speaking to the wall. By signing, you agree not to disclose information about the Montero family, their businesses, their assets, or any aspect of their private lives. Which means, Tola translated with evident pleasure, that you can go crying to the media for pity. Amaka felt a pressure in her chest that almost prevented her from breathing. It wasn't just the divorce. It wasn't just losing Kunle. It was the way they were treating her. As if she were a threat that needed to be neutralized. As if her existence in the Montero's lives had been a mistake they were finally correcting. I would never do such a thing, Amaka said. Of course you wouldn't. Mama Ayo replied with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Why else would you sign that clause? Amaka looked around the living room. The walls were decorated with original artworks that cost more than she would earn in her entire life. The crystal chandeliers sparkled above them like artificial stars. The champagne flutes reflected the light in ways that seemed designed to remind her that she did not belong in that world. And yet, she had belonged. For years, she had been part of that family. She had organized Christmas dinners. She had cared for Mama Ayo when she was ill. She had accompanied Chief Segun to his medical appointments when no one else had time. She had loved Kunle with all her heart. She had given up her career when he asked her to dedicate herself to their home. She had put everyone's needs above her own. And now all of that was worth less than the champagne flute Tola held with disdain. Is there anything you need to know before I sign? Amaka said, her voice gaining a firmness that surprised everyone in the room. What? Are you going to ask for more money? Kunle asked, crossing his arms. Because that's not going to happen. No, I don't want your money. A confused silence fell over the living room. Mama Ayo exchanged a glance with her husband. Tola stopped smiling for an instant. Even Barrister Adiola looked up from his documents. Then what do you want? Chief Segun spoke for the first time, his grave voice resonating in the room. I want you to remember this moment, Amaka said, looking each of them directly in the eyes. I want you to remember how you treated me today. The laughter, the champagne, the taunts. I want you to engrave it deeply in your memory. Is that a threat? Mama Ayo straightened up, offended. No, Mama Ayo, it's a request. Because someday you will understand who I really am. And when that day comes, I want you to remember exactly how you behaved. How dramatic, Tola exclaimed with a laugh. Who do you think you are? A disguised princess? Laughter once again filled the living room. Kunle shook his head, visibly irritated by what he considered a pathetic attempt to maintain dignity. Just sign it, Amaka, he ordered. Stop the dramatics. Amaka picked up the pen, held it for a moment, looking at the tip as if all the pain of those years was concentrated within it. Then, with a calm that disconcerted everyone, she signed each page, one by one, without haste, without visible tears, without a tremor in her hand. When she finished, she gently placed the pen on the table and stood up. It's done, she said. I am no longer part of this family. You never really were, Mama Ayo concluded, raising her champagne glass. Let's toast, family. We're finally rid of this mistake. The glasses clinked with a sound that to Amaka felt like the final nail in a coffin. She walked towards the living room door, each step feeling as if she were walking on broken glass. She did not turn around. She did not give them the satisfaction of seeing her face crumble, but as she crossed the threshold, she heard Tola's voice one last time. Good luck washing floors, that's all you're good for. The laughter chased her into the hallway. Amaka quickened her pace, crossing the Montero estate's grand foyer with her gaze fixed on the main door. The domestic staff watched her with expressions of silent compassion. Mama Fei, the housekeeper who had worked for the Monteros for decades, briefly intercepted her. Mrs. Amaka, she whispered, taking her hand for an instant. Not everyone in this house thinks alike. You were the only one who treated us like people. Amaka squeezed Mama Fei's hand, unable to speak due to the lump in her throat, and stepped out into the night. The cold air hit her like a merciful slap. She paused on the grand entrance steps, looking at the illuminated garden, the fountains, the luxury cars parked in the circular driveway, all that world that was never truly hers, and which now spat her out unceremoniously. She walked to the street, where a local taxi awaited her. She didn't own a car. Kunle had always insisted she use the family driver, another subtle form of control she had mistaken for care. Where to, ma? The taxi driver asked. Amaka gave the address of a small self-contained apartment she had rented, with the little she had saved. A tiny place in a modest area of the city, so different from the Montero estate that it seemed to belong to another planet. During the ride, she looked out the window, not really seeing anything. The city lights passed by like blurred colors, as if the world were weeping the tears she refused to shed. Her phone vibrated, a message from a number she knew by heart, but hadn't saved with a name. "Did you sign yet?" Amaka stared at the message for several seconds before replying with 2 words. "I signed." The reply came almost instantly. Then, "It's time. Come see me tomorrow. We have a lot to talk about." Amaka closed her eyes, resting her head against the cold taxi window. That message was from the only person in the world who knew the whole truth. The truth the Monteros never bothered to discover. The truth Kunle never asked. The truth she had kept throughout her marriage as a secret no one deserved to know. Because Amaka Obi was not who everyone believed her to be, and the family that had just humiliated her had no idea what was about to unfold. What none of the Monteros knew was that Amaka had endured every insult, every humiliation, every laugh for a very specific reason. It was not weakness, not submission, not a lack of options. It was a promise she had made to someone very important, a promise that, with that signature, was now officially fulfilled. And that person was exactly who no one expected. As the taxi pulled away from the Montero estate, somewhere else in the city, in an office on the top floor of one of the tallest buildings in the Lagos financial district, a man looked at his phone with a serious expression. He read Amaka's 2 words, "I signed," and then, for the first time in a long while, that man did something his business partners, his employees, and the entire world had never seen him do. He wept. Because that man was Amaka's father, and what he was about to do would change everything, absolutely everything. Back at the estate, the celebration continued. Mama Ayo had ordered dinner served in the grand dining hall as if they had just won a significant battle. Finally, she sighed as the staff served the dishes. "Finally, we can breathe easy." "I always knew that woman wasn't right for you," she told Kunle, stroking his cheek as if he were a child who had just passed a difficult exam. "Now you can find someone on your level." Kunle nodded distractedly, checking his phone. A model was already waiting for him for dinner elsewhere. The transition from husband to bachelor had taken him exactly the time Amaka needed to sign the papers. "How much did we give her in the end?" Chief Segun asked from the head of the table. "The bare minimum," replied Barrister Adiola, who had stayed for dinner as part of his reward for a job well done. "Enough so she can't complain legally, but little enough so she understands her place." "Perfect." Chief Segun nodded with satisfaction. "I don't like wasting money on lost causes." Tola raised her glass again. "I propose another toast. To the Monteros, because we always win. To the Monteros." Everyone cheered. What none of them knew, as they clinked their imported crystal stemware and congratulated each other for getting rid of the intruder, was that at that very moment, kilometers away, a series of events was being set in motion that would destroy every one of their certainties, because they had made a fundamental mistake. The worst mistake an arrogant family can make. They had judged someone by their appearance. They had confused humility with weakness. They had assumed that silence meant submission, and they were about to discover in the most devastating way possible that they were completely wrong. The night continued outside, indifferent to human dramas. But inside the Montero estate, an invisible clock had begun to count. The countdown had begun, and when it reached 0, nothing in the Monteros' lives would ever be the same. Amaka's apartment could fit entirely into the walk-in closet of the Montero estate. A small room with a tiny kitchen, a bathroom barely allowing the door to close, and a window overlooking an alley where cats fought at midnight. But it was hers, completely hers. And that night, for the first time in years, Amaka felt she could breathe. She sat on the edge of the bed, a mattress on a wooden frame she had bought from a second-hand market, and allowed herself to do what she hadn't done in front of the Monteros: cry. She cried for the lost years. She cried for the love she gave without receiving anything in return. She cried for the nights she spent waiting for Kunle while he worked late at social events with people who considered her inferior. She cried for every time Mama Ayo made her feel that she wasn't enough, that she would never be enough. But she also cried with relief, because the cage, however gilded it might have appeared from the outside, was finally open. When her tears ran dry, Amaka washed her face with cold water and looked at herself in the small bathroom mirror. The woman looking back had swollen eyes but a firm jaw. She was not a defeated woman. She was a woman finally free to be who she truly was. She picked up her phone and reread the message. "Come see me tomorrow. We have a lot to talk about. Tomorrow. Everything would change tomorrow." She lay down on her small bed, listening to the sounds of the city that never fully sleeps, and for the first time in years, she slept in peace. The next day, Amaka woke up early. She dressed in the most presentable clothes she owned. Nothing luxurious, but clean and dignified, and stepped out onto the street. The contrast between her neighborhood and the area she was heading to was stark. From potholed streets and modest shops to wide avenues flanked by glass buildings that reflected the sky like giant mirrors. Atlas Holdings building occupied an entire block of the financial district. It was an imposing tower that dominated the skyline with a marble lobby where every step echoed like a declaration of power. Amaka entered through the main door alongside executives who walked briskly with expressions of importance and headed to the reception. "Good morning," she said to the receptionist. "I have a meeting." "Your name, please." "Amaka Obi." The receptionist typed the name into her computer. What appeared on the screen instantly changed her professional demeanor to one of utmost attention. "Miss Obi, of course. They are expecting you. 42nd floor. The private elevator is to your right. Thank you." Amaka walked towards the private elevator, the one used only by people with access to the top floor, the president's office. As the doors closed and the elevator began to ascend, her heart pounded, not from nerves, but from anticipation. The doors opened onto the 42nd floor, revealing a space that combined elegance with warmth. It wasn't ostentatious like the Montero estate, where everything seemed designed to impress. This place was different. Real books on the shelves, family photographs in simple frames, a worn rug from years of use that no one had bothered to change because it held sentimental value. Amaka. The voice came from a man who rose from behind a large desk with neatly combed gray hair, eyes that combined business shrewdness with a tenderness that only appeared when he saw his daughter. His suit was impeccable but not flashy, like someone who no longer needed to prove anything to anyone. "Papa." Amaka ran to him and hugged him with the desperation of someone who had been holding back pain for too long. Chief Obinna Obi hugged his daughter tightly, feeling her tremble in his arms. This man, who negotiated multi-million naira deals without batting an eyelid, who had built an empire from scratch, who was respected and feared in equal measure in the business world, felt completely helpless before his daughter's tears. "It's over, my child," he whispered. "It's all over. They were horrible, Papa." Right to the end, they served champagne as if celebrating getting rid of garbage. Chief Obinna closed his eyes, containing the anger that boiled within him. "Tell me everything, every detail." They sat on a sofa by the window that offered a panoramic view of the city. Amaka told him everything. Mama Ayo's taunts, Kunle's indifference, Tola's cruelties, Chief Segun's complicit silence. She told him about the confidentiality clause, about the miserable compensation, about Tola's parting shot, suggesting that all she was good for was washing floors. With each word, Chief Obinna's face hardened further. He was not an impulsive man. One does not build an empire by being impulsive. But there was something in his eyes that Amaka recognized, the cold determination of someone about to move pieces on a board that no one else could see. "Do you know why I never told them who you were?" Amaka asked, when she finished recounting the events. "Because I asked you not to," Chief Obinna replied with regret. "And it was a mistake." "No, Papa. It was a test. You told me that if someone loved me just for myself, they wouldn't need to know anything else. And you were right. Kunle never loved me for who I am. He used me as decoration when it suited him and discarded me when he found something he considered better." Chief Obinna clenched his jaw. "When you married Kunle, I had him discreetly investigated, remember? I remember I asked you not to, and you listened. Another mistake. But there's something I did discover later, when you started sounding unhappy in our calls." Amaka looked at him in surprise. "What did you discover?" Chief Obinna got up and walked to his desk. He opened a drawer and took out a thick folder. He placed it in front of his daughter. "I sent my investigation team to do a complete review of the Montero conglomerate. Not for revenge, but for protection, to know exactly who you were involved with." Amaka opened the folder. What she found inside took her breath away. "Papa, this is..." "Yes. The Monteros are not what they appear to be. Their empire is built on sand." The documents revealed a reality the Montero family had meticulously kept hidden. The Montero conglomerate had massive debts. They had inflated the value of their properties. They had overdue credits with multiple financial institutions, and several of their subsidiary companies operated at losses that they disguised with creative accounting. "Are they bankrupt?" Amaka asked, processing the information. "Not yet, but they are on the verge, and here's what you need to know." Chief Obinna pointed to a specific document. 3 of their most important real estate development contracts depend on a financial partner who promised them investment. That partner is a firm called Meridian Investments. and Meridian Investments is one of my subsidiaries. Amaka froze. You're a partner with the Monteros? Not directly. Meridian negotiated with them through intermediaries. The Monteros have no idea who is behind Meridian. To them, it's simply a foreign investment fund. Why did you never tell me this? Because when I discovered the connection, you were still married. I didn't want to complicate things. But now that you've signed the divorce, now that there's no legal tie between you and that family, Chief Obinna left the sentence hanging in the air. What are you going to do, Papa? Chief Obinna looked out the window, his reflection superimposed over the city sprawling below. I'm not going to do anything yet. First, I want you to decide what you want. What do I want? Do you want revenge, justice, or do you simply want to move on with your life? Amaka thought about the question carefully. The images from the previous night flashed through her mind like a repeating film. The laughter, the champagne, the insults, Mama Ayo's scornful face, Kunle's indifference. I don't want revenge, she finally said, but I do want justice. Not for money, but because what they did to me was not right, and if there are no consequences, they will continue to treat people that way. Chief Obinna nodded slowly. That's my daughter. Not revenge, but justice. And justice is exactly what they will receive. But Papa, I don't want you to destroy anyone. I don't want to be like them. I'm not going to destroy anyone, Amaka. I'm just going to let the truth come to light. And the truth, my child, is the most powerful force that exists. At that moment, the office door opened, and a woman in her 40s entered, elegant yet approachable, with an electronic tablet in her hand and an expression that combined efficiency with empathy. Chief Obi, the documents you requested are ready, she announced. Thank you, Barrister Ngozi. Chief Obinna nodded. Amaka, this is Barrister Ngozi, my legal director. Barrister Ngozi, my daughter. A pleasure to finally meet you, Barrister Ngozi smiled warmly. Your father talks about you constantly. Barrister Ngozi has been working on something important, Chief Obinna explained. Tell her. Barrister Ngozi sat down, opening her tablet. Amaka, the divorce documents you signed last night have several legal irregularities. Irregularities? Amaka pallid. The confidentiality clause is abusive and would likely not withstand a legal challenge. The financial compensation is far below what you would legally be entitled to after years of marriage. And there's a hidden clause on page 12 that forces you to waive any future claims on assets acquired during the marriage. I didn't see that clause. Amaka's face went white. Exactly. It was designed for you not to see it. Barrister Adeola is known for these types of tactics. What does that mean for me? It means we have options. Many options. Chief Obinna sat next to his daughter. But we won't do anything you don't want, Amaka. This is your life, your decision. I just want you to know you're not alone. You never were. Amaka looked at her father, at Barrister Ngozi, and then again at the documents in the folder that revealed the fragility of the Montero Empire. A week ago, she felt like the loneliest person in the world. Today, sitting on the 42nd floor of Atlas Holdings, she realized something. She hadn't been alone. Her father had been there all along in silence, waiting, respecting her decisions, even if he disagreed with them, protecting her from the shadows, without her knowing it. Why did you never come for me? She asked, tears forming again. All those years I was unhappy with the Monteros. Why didn't you come? The question hit Chief Obinna like a hammer to the chest. He took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes, a gesture Amaka recognized as his way of containing emotions. Because you asked me to let you live your life, he replied, his voice breaking. You told me you needed to prove you could be happy without my money, without my name, without my protection. And I respected that, even though it tore me apart inside every time I heard sadness in your voice. Papa, you don't know how many times I was about to go to that estate and tell that family exactly who I was? How many times I wanted to buy everything they own and leave them on the street. But you taught me something, Amaka. What? That true love respects the other's decisions, even if they hurt. That protecting someone doesn't always mean solving their problems, but being there when they need support. Amaka hugged her father again, and this time, the tears were different. They were not of pain or relief, but of gratitude for having someone who loved her enough to let her make mistakes and be there when she needed to get back up. So, Chief Obinna said when they separated, discreetly wiping his eyes, "What do we do?" Amaka straightened up on the sofa, her posture subtly changing. She was no longer the shrinking woman who had signed papers while being insulted. She was Chief Obinna Obi's daughter, and for the first time in years, she was ready to act as such. "First," she said in a firm voice, I want to know everything about the Monteros' financial situation. Every debt, every contract, every weakness. Barrister Ngozi nodded, opening files on her tablet. Second, Amaka continued, I want us to review every clause of that divorce. If there are irregularities, I want them legally corrected. We're already on it, Barrister Ngozi confirmed. And third, Amaka paused, looking directly into her father's eyes. I want the Monteros to discover the truth, not to destroy them, but for them to understand that the person they despised was more valuable than they ever imagined. Chief Obinna smiled for the first time in that meeting. It wasn't a smile of satisfaction or revenge. It was the smile of a proud father. That's my daughter, he repeated. Barrister Ngozi, activate the protocol. It's time for the Montero family to know Chief Obinna Obi. Barrister Ngozi nodded with an expression that suggested she had been waiting for that order. With pleasure, Chief. While on the 42nd floor of Atlas Holdings, a strategy was being woven that would change the destiny of several families at the Montero estate. Life continued with its usual arrogance. Mama Ayo was having breakfast in the garden, leafing through a society magazine that featured a photo of the family at a recent charity event. Kunle had already left, probably to meet his new conquest. Tola was trying on dresses for a weekend party. Chief Segun was reviewing financial reports in his study, his furrowed brow revealing concerns he shared with no one. None of them had the slightest idea that the woman they had dismissed with champagne and taunts the previous night was the daughter of the man who literally held their financial empire. None of them imagined that every contract keeping them afloat depended on a signature that answered to Chief Obinna Obi. And none of them suspected that the storm gathering would make everything they knew, their estate, their status, their arrogance, tremble to its foundations. The invisible clock kept counting, and the Monteros kept celebrating, completely oblivious to the fact that they had humiliated the wrong person at the most wrong time. The first indications that something was terribly wrong arrived at the Montero estate in the most unexpected way. Through a phone call Chief Segun received while having breakfast. They froze the credit line. His normally controlled voice rose enough for Mama Ayo to put down her magazine and look at him with alarm from across the table. Chief Segun listened, his face growing paler and paler. On the other end of the line, the director of Pacific Corporate Bank explained that the Montero conglomerate's main credit line had been temporarily suspended due to a credit risk re-evaluation. This is unacceptable, Chief Segun growled, gripping his fork so tightly that his knuckles turned white. We've worked with you for decades. What re-evaluation? Chief Segun, with all due respect, the numbers speak for themselves. Our risk department detected inconsistencies in your latest financial reports. Until they are clarified, the line remains suspended. Who ordered that review? A brief silence. That information is confidential, sir. Chief Segun slammed the phone down hard enough to make the breakfast china tremble on the table. Coffee spilled onto the embroidered tablecloth Mama Ayo had brought from Europe, but for the first time, she didn't care about the stain. Her husband's expression concerned her more. What's wrong, Segun? Nothing I can't resolve, he replied with the same phrase he used every time something threatened the facade of perfection the Monteros maintained before the world. But this time, the phrase sounded hollow, like a promise made by someone who no longer believed in it. Because the calls didn't stop there. Before noon, the Monteros' world began to crack on all sides. A construction material supplier canceled a major contract, citing new market conditions. An auditing firm the Monteros had used for years announced it could no longer provide services due to a conflict of interest, and the bank, where they held their personal accounts, requested additional documentation for a routine transaction that normally processed without question. Each call was like a domino falling, and each domino knocked down the next. What is going on? Kunle burst into his father's study, still in his crumpled suit jacket from the night before, having received several alarming calls from contacts in the business world. Eduardo Villanueva cancelled a business lunch with me. He said he prefers to wait for things to clear up. What things, Papa? Chief Segun did not respond immediately. He was sitting behind his desk, surrounded by papers he had been frantically reviewing for the past few hours. His tie was loose. The top button of his shirt opened small details that, in a man like Chief Segun Montero, amounted to a cry of despair. Someone is moving against us, he finally said. I don't know who, but they have enough power to influence banks, suppliers, and auditors simultaneously. A competitor? No competitor has that reach. This is something different, something bigger. The study door opened again. Tola entered with her phone in hand and an expression her family had never seen on her face, genuine fear. Papa, my supplementary credit card just got cancelled. The one from the bank. It says it's blocked for account review. Mine too. Mama Ayo appeared behind Tola, holding her own phone as if it were a venomous animal. I tried to make a purchase, and it was rejected. Do you have any idea how humiliating that was? The sales assistant looked at me as if I were. She didn't complete the sentence, but everyone understood. The sales assistant had looked at her the way Mama Ayo used to look at Amaka, like someone who didn't belong. I need to make calls. Chief Segun stood up. Kunle, contact all our financial partners. I want to know who is still with us and who is turning their back. Tola, stop worrying about the card and call Barrister Adeola. I need my lawyer here in an hour. And me? Mama Ayo asked. You wait and pray that this is just a misunderstanding. But it wasn't a misunderstanding, and deep down, Chief Segun knew it. Days later, the situation escalated from concerning to desperate. Barrister Adeola arrived at the estate with a distraught face, carrying his briefcase as if it contained a death sentence. Chief Segun, we have a serious problem, he announced without preamble, dropping into a chair without waiting for an invitation, something he had never done. Another one. Tell me. I received a legal notification from a firm representing Amaka Obi. The name fell over the room like a stone in a still pond. The ripples spread, touching every person present. Amaka? Mama Ayo let out a nervous laugh that sounded more like a whimper. That woman has money to hire a lawyer? Not just a lawyer. Barrister Adeola opened his briefcase with visibly trembling hands. The firm representing her is Adetokunbo and Partners. The silence that followed was the kind that precedes earthquakes. Chief Segun slowly rose from his chair, as if the name of that firm weighed on his shoulders. Adetokunbo and Partners? That's one of the most expensive and powerful legal firms in the country. They don't take just anyone's cases. Exactly. And they are challenging the entire divorce settlement. They allege abusive clauses, inadequate compensation, and vices of consent. Vices of consent? Kunle asked from the corner of the study, where he had been listening with his arms crossed. They claim Amaka signed under psychological pressure in a hostile environment. They have witness statements. What witnesses? Chief Segun asked, though a part of him already knew the answer. Barrister Adeola swallowed hard. Domestic staff from this house. Apparently, several household employees are willing to testify about the treatment Mrs. Amaka received during the marriage. And not only that, they also have records of conversations, documented incidents, detailed testimonies of years of systematic psychological abuse. That's betrayal, Mama Ayo exclaimed, standing up so abruptly that she knocked over her teacup. Our own employees, the people we give jobs to, whom we pay a salary. Mama Ayo, Barrister Adeola, looked at her with a seriousness he had never shown her. These are people who for years witnessed how you treated someone you were supposed to cherish, and now they are willing to speak. Who contacted them? Chief Segun pressed. I don't know, but whoever it is has the resources to orchestrate a legal strategy of this magnitude. Adetokunbo and Partners doesn't work for free, Chief Segun. We're talking about fees that exceed what many families earn in their entire lives. How is it possible that that woman can afford Adetokunbo and Partners? Tola asked, her voice losing all the arrogance that normally characterized her. She has nothing. She came to this family with nothing and left with nothing because you made sure of it. Barrister Adeola replied, and for the first time in his career as the Monteros' lawyer, his tone hinted at something resembling reproach. Watch what you say, Barrister Adeola, Chief Segun warned. Chief Segun, with all due respect, my job is to protect your legal interests, and at this moment, your legal interests are seriously compromised. If Adetokunbo and Partners takes this case to court, you will not only lose far more money than you would have given Amaka in a fair divorce, but this family's public reputation will be completely exposed. Is there anything else? Kunle asked, his voice hollow, as if he sensed that the worst was yet to come. Yes. I did some digging on Amaka Obi because I needed to understand how she secured such high-level representation, and I discovered something I can't explain. What? Several public records related to her are sealed, protected, as if someone with immense power had secured her privacy. That's not done by just anyone. That's done by people with connections at the highest levels. The air in the study became unbreathable. Each Montero processed the information in their own way. Chief Segun with calculating fury, Mama Ayo with growing panic, Kunle with a guilt that began to suffocate him, Tola with the terror of someone watching the only world they knew crumble. It was at that moment that an unexpected voice spoke from the study doorway. You need to know something. Everyone turned. It was Uncle G. de Montero, Chief Segun's younger brother, a man who rarely visited the estate and maintained a prudent distance from family affairs, but today he was there with a grave expression and a manila envelope in his hand. "Jide, what are you doing here?" Chief Segun asked with genuine surprise. "I came because I've been investigating for days who is behind everything that's happening to you. The frozen credits, the retreating suppliers, the rumors in the market, it all comes from the same source." He sat down without waiting for an invitation, opened the envelope, and took out several documents which he placed on his brother's desk. "Look at this." Every financial move against the Montero conglomerate was executed with surgical precision. It's not an angry competitor or a betrayed partner. It's someone who has the power to move banks, auditing firms, and supply chains with a single phone call. "Who has that kind of power?" Mama Ayo asked, though her voice suggested she didn't want to hear the answer. "I only know one man in this country capable of doing something like that." Uncle Jide looked at his brother directly. "Chief Obina Obi." The name detonated in the room like a silent bomb. Chief Segun clutched the edge of his desk. Mama Ayo sank onto the nearest sofa, her coral bead necklace suddenly heavy around her neck. Kunle closed his eyes, as if he had just received a physical blow. Tola opened her mouth, but no sound came out. "Chief Obina Obi," Chief Segun repeated the name, as if each syllable burned. "The Chief Obina Obi of Atlas Holdings? The owner of one of the continent's largest fortunes, the man who can buy and sell companies like ours before breakfast? And what does Chief Obina Obi have to do with us?" Mama Ayo asked, clinging to the last hope that it was all a coincidence. Uncle Jide looked at each of them, one by one, before uttering the words that would change everything. "Amaka Obi is not just Amaka Obi, she is Chief Obina Obi's daughter." If there had been silence before, now there was a vacuum. An absolute void where the Monteros' certainties, pride, arrogance, and superiority evaporated like water in the desert. Kunle was the first to react. He collapsed into a chair, his legs unable to support him. Images flashed through his mind at dizzying speed. Amaka, arriving at the estate in her simple clothes. Amaka enduring his mother's insults with silent dignity. Amaka signing the papers while everyone laughed. Amaka walking towards the door without turning back. His wife, the daughter of the most powerful man any of them had ever known. And he had let her go like discarding a used handkerchief. "It can't be," Mama Ayo murmured, repeating the phrase like a useless mantra. "It can't be. It can't be." "How did we not realize?" Tola asked, her voice barely audible. "How is it possible?" "Because you never thought to ask," Uncle Jide replied with an honesty that stung. "You assumed she was poor, insignificant, replaceable. Did you ever ask her about her family, about her father, about her history?" The silence was the most eloquent answer. "She never talked about her father," Kunle muttered. "In all our years together, she never mentioned her father. I assumed he didn't have one, or that he was someone irrelevant." "And you never asked?" Uncle Jide looked at him with a mixture of compassion and disappointment. "I never cared," Kunle confessed. And hearing his own words, he felt each one was a stone falling upon his chest. He never cared about his wife's story, her family, her dreams, her pain. He never cared enough. "Well, now you care." Uncle Jide stood up. "Because Chief Obina Obi has his finger on the button that can destroy everything you have. And considering how you treated his daughter, he has every moral right to press it." "What do we do?" Chief Segun asked. And for the first time in anyone's memory, his voice sounded small, fragile, like the voice of a man who had just discovered that the ground beneath his feet was glass, and always had been. "You need to talk to Amaka," Uncle Jide said. "And you need to do so with genuine humility, not the humility of someone who wants to save their money, but the humility of someone who recognizes they made a mistake." "Humility?" Mama Ayo repeated the word as if it were a foreign language, and in a sense, for her, it was. She had never practiced humility. She had never needed it. Until now. "Yes, Mama Ayo," Uncle Jide looked at her directly. "Humility. That thing you demanded of Amaka every day while you lived, drowned in arrogance." No one responded because no one could. Uncle Jide walked towards the door but stopped before leaving. "I'm going to tell you something my mother used to repeat. Money can buy many things, but it cannot buy the respect that is lost by being cruel. You lost something no fortune can ever recover. The question is whether you are still in time to repair some of the damage." And with those words, he left the study, leaving the Monteros alone with the crushing weight of a truth that had been before them for years, and that they were too blind, too arrogant, too cruel to see. They had had the daughter of a giant sitting at their table and had treated her as if she were dirt on their shoes. That night, for the first time in the history of the Montero estate, no one dined, no one spoke, no one turned on the garden lights, nor served the evening wine. The estate, which always shone like a beacon of wealth and power, lay in darkness. And in that darkness, each Montero faced something they had avoided all their lives. The truth about who they really were when no one was watching. The answer churned in their stomachs. The confirmation came in the worst possible way for the Monteros. Chief Segun, in an act of desperation that contradicted all his business caution, had hired a private investigator to verify the connection between Amaka and Chief Obina Obi. The result came in a few hours. Photographs of Amaka entering the Atlas Holdings building, being greeted by security personnel who treated her with absolute deference, and going up the private elevator that led to only one place. The president's office. It's her, the investigator confirmed by phone. Amaka Obi is Chief Obina Obi's daughter. We verified it with 3 independent sources. Chief Segun laid the photographs on his desk and convened the family. There was no need to explain. The images spoke for themselves. Kunle looked at them as one watches the scene of their own destruction. Each photo was a different blow. Amaka, walking confidently through a marble lobby that made the Montero estate seem modest. Amaka being greeted by executives who stood up when she passed. Amaka disappearing into an elevator that took her directly to the most powerful man in the country. For years, Kunle murmured, addressing no one in particular. Her father was there, waiting, watching, knowing exactly how we treated her. Don't think about that now, Chief Segun cut in, though he himself couldn't stop thinking about it. We need to act. Act? How? Tola asked with a trembling voice. What do you say to Chief Obina Obi's daughter after serving her champagne to celebrate her humiliation? The question hung in the air like an unanswerable poison. We need to talk to her, Chief Segun decided directly, without intermediaries. Kunle, you were her husband. You should be the first. Me? Kunle let out a bitter laugh. The same man who didn't defend her even once in years of marriage, who told her to hurry up and sign because he had a dinner reservation? Precisely for that reason, Uncle Jide intervened. He had returned that morning, sensing his presence would be necessary. Because you were the one who hurt her the most. You are the one who most needs to face her. Kunle looked at his uncle with eyes that had lost all arrogance. What remained was something the Montero family rarely showed. Genuine vulnerability. He's right, he admitted. I should have been her protector, and I was her worst tormentor. Arranging the meeting proved to be a process that was itself a lesson in humility. Amaka's number no longer worked. Communication had to go through layers of lawyers and assistants. When the answer finally came, it was clear and direct. Miss Obi agrees to meet, but under her conditions. Neutral location, no lawyers from the Montero side, and with the presence of her father. Her father will be there? Kunle felt the ground move beneath his feet. It's her condition. Accept it or there will be no meeting. Mama Ayo protested. Us setting our conditions to them. Since when do the Monteros kneel? Since we humiliated the daughter of the man who can wipe us off the map. Kunle replied with an honesty that silenced his mother. We accept all conditions. The meeting was scheduled in a private suite of a prestigious hotel in the city center. The Monteros arrived together. Chief Segun, Mama Ayo, Kunle, and Tola. Uncle Jide accompanied them, not as a Montero, but as the only person in that family who still retained some moral perspective. They waited 15 minutes in a silence none of them had experienced before. It wasn't the comfortable silence of wealth, nor the calculated silence of business meetings. It was the silence of people about to face the consequences of their actions. Then, the door opened. Amaka entered first, and the Monteros saw something that completely disoriented them. It was not the Amaka they remembered. It was not the shrinking woman who endured insults with her head bowed. It was not the invisible daughter-in-law who served coffee while everyone ignored her. The woman who walked towards them had a presence that filled the room without needing jewelry, without needing expensive clothes, without needing anything more than the dignity she had always possessed, but which they never recognized. Behind her, Chief Obina Obi entered. The difference in power was immediate and palpable. Chief Segun Montero, who had always considered himself an important man, suddenly felt small in Chief Obina's presence. It wasn't a matter of physical stature, it was something deeper. The absolute self-assurance of a man who needs to impress no one because his power speaks for itself. Good afternoon, Amaka greeted with neutral courtesy, without warmth, but without hostility. Amaka. Kunle took a step forward but stopped when Chief Obina's eyes fell upon him. There was no threat in that gaze, But there was something worse, a silent judgment that said, I know exactly who you are and what you did. They sat down, the Monteros on one side, Amaka and Chief Obina on the other. The space between both sides of the table seemed like an abyss. Before speaking of business or legal matters, Amaka broke the silence. There's something I need to say. Go ahead, Chief Segun nodded, forcing himself to maintain composure. For years, I lived in your home. I shared your table. I was part of your family. And during all those years, you made me feel like I was worthless. Not because of something I did wrong, but simply for not having the right family name or the right bank account. Each word fell upon the Monteros, like drops of molten lead. I endured Mama Ayo's comments about my clothes, about my way of speaking, about my background. I endured being introduced to her friends as Kunle's wife, while other daughters-in-law were introduced by their full names and family surnames. I endured Kunle's indifference every time his mother humiliated me in front of guests. I endured Tola's taunts, who never missed an opportunity to remind me that I was picked up from nothing. Tola lowered her gaze, her face burning with shame. But what hurt me the most, Amaka continued, and here her voice broke for the first time before regaining firmness, was not the cruelty, it was the indifference. Kunle, you never defended me, not once. When your mother compared me to your friends' wives, you changed the subject. When Tola mocked my clothes at family parties, you pretended not to hear. I was your wife, and you treated me as if I were an uncomfortable piece of furniture you couldn't return to the store. Kunle felt each word like a knife reopening wounds he himself had caused. And the worst part was that he couldn't defend himself because everything was true. Absolutely everything. I could have stopped this at any moment, Amaka continued. One call to my father, and things would have been very different. But I didn't do it because I wanted to believe that love could overcome prejudice, that you would eventually accept me for who I am, not for who my father is. And why are you telling us this now? Chief Segun asked. Not with confrontation, but with a genuine need to understand. Because now that I am no longer part of this family, you need to hear the truth, not to destroy you, but so you understand something your money never taught you. What? That respect should not depend on how much money someone has. You treated me as inferior because you thought I was poor. And if I really had been, would that justify the way you treated me? Does a person without money deserve to be humiliated at the Christmas table? Deserve to be served champagne to celebrate their dismissal? The question hung suspended like an unappealable sentence, and the Monteros' silence was the most honest confession they had made in their lives. Chief Obina spoke for the first time since they sat down. I'm going to be direct, Chief Segun, because your time and mine are valuable. Chief Segun nodded, bracing himself for the worst. Meridian Investments is mine. The 3 contracts that underpin your main projects depend on my capital. The credit line you had frozen was due to my influence. The suppliers who withdrew did so because my companies are their primary clients, and I suggested they reevaluate their associations. Each revelation was like watching the walls of a fortress, believed to be indestructible, crumble. I could destroy the Montero conglomerate in a matter of days, Chief Obina continued without altering his tone. And I would have every moral right to do so after what you did to my daughter for years. Chief Segun, tried to speak, but I'm not going to do it. The surprise was visible on every Montero face. Even Amaka looked at her father with some confusion. I'm not going to do it because my daughter asked me not to. Chief Obina looked at Amaka with a tenderness no Montero had ever seen in a father's eyes. And because destroying another family won't heal the pain you caused. My daughter taught me that. The same woman you called insignificant taught me something all my money could never buy. That true greatness lies in mercy, not in revenge. Mama Ayo was the first to break. She rose slowly, as if every bone in her body protested against what she was about to do. The matriarch who never apologized, who never admitted mistakes, who never bowed her head to anyone, found herself looking at Amaka with eyes full of tears. Amaka, she said, and her voice sounded like something she herself did not recognize. I was cruel to you from the first day. Not because you had done anything wrong, but because I was afraid. Afraid that my son would love someone I couldn't control. Afraid that someone from outside would see that behind all our coral beads and chandeliers, we are a family full of emptiness that we filled with things instead of love. Tears streamed down her face, and she made no attempt to stop them. I'm sorry. I'm deeply sorry. Not because I'm afraid of your father, but because I just heard my daughter-in-law describe years of suffering that I caused, and I recognize every word, every single one. Kunle stood up. His hands trembled at his sides, and his voice came out broken, like someone speaking through shattered glass. Amaka, I am the one who failed you the most. I promised to protect you on our wedding day. I promised it in front of everyone, and then I systematically left you alone to face everything. In front of my mother, in front of my sister, in front of a world that judged you for things that don't matter, I have no excuse. I just want you to know that I lost the best person who has ever entered my life. Not because of your father or his money. I lost you, the woman who loved me when I didn't deserve to be loved. And that is something I will carry forever. Tola spoke next, fighting against a pride that crumbled with each word. Amaka, every horrible thing I said to you wasn't about you. It was about me. You were everything I wanted to be and didn't know how. Authentic, kind, strong, without needing to crush others. I attacked you because your light made me see my own darkness. And that is the most cowardly thing I have ever done in my life. Chief Segun was the last. He stood with the broken dignity of a man who sees his own failures with brutal clarity. Miss Obi, Amaka, I allowed all of this with my silence. I could have stopped my wife with a word. I could have reprimanded my daughter. I could have demanded that my son be the husband he promised to be, but I did nothing. And silence in the face of injustice is the worst form of complicity. I ask for your forgiveness, not to save my company, but because my mother, may God rest her soul, would have slapped me if she had seen how we treated an innocent woman in her own home. The room was saturated with an emotion no one had anticipated. Amaka looked at them, searching their eyes for the answer to the only question that mattered. Was it real? She found it in a detail only someone with Amaka's sensitivity would have noticed. None of them had mentioned the company, the money, or the financial consequences during their apologies. They had spoken of her as a person, of pain, of genuine repentance. I accept your apologies, Amaka said, and her voice sounded like rain after an endless drought. And I want you to know something my mother taught me before she left this world. Everyone waited. She told me, Amaka, dignity is not something others give or take away from you. Dignity lives within you, and only you decide if it shines or fades. During all the years I lived with you, my dignity never faded, even though you tried to extinguish it every day. The impact of those words was visible on every face. Mama Ayo covered her mouth with her hands. Kunle closed his eyes, letting tears fall without resistance. Tola sobbed in silence. Chief Segun looked at the floor, unable to meet the gaze of the woman he had helped destroy. I hold no grudge against you, Amaka continued. Resentment is a burden I am unwilling to carry. But I need you to understand that forgiveness does not mean forgetting. It means choosing my peace over the pain you caused me. Chief Obina watched his daughter with sparkling eyes. At that moment, all his fortune, all his power, all his empire seemed insignificant compared to the pride he felt for the extraordinary woman he had raised. As for business matters, Amaka said with a firmer tone, my father and you will discuss those directly. I only want one thing, anything, Chief Segun replied instantly. That you truly change not just with me, but with every person you encounter. Employees, partners, strangers. That you never again measure someone's worth by the weight of their wallet. We will, Mama Ayo promised. And her tears testified that, at least in that moment, she meant it. Chief Obina nodded. Chief Segun, if you and I can speak alone after this, I believe we can find a solution that works for everyone. I have no interest in destroying what you built, but I do need to see real changes. Actions, not words. You will see them, Chief Segun promised. When Amaka and Chief Obina left the hotel, the sky was tinged with the colors of sunset. Amaka breathed deeply, feeling the weight of years of pain lighten with each breath. I'm proud of you, Chief Obina said as they walked. You could have crushed them, and you chose dignity. It's not dignity, Papa. It's freedom. Destroying them would have chained me to them forever, and I no longer want any chains. Chief Obina smiled. Your mother would be so proud of you. The stars wouldn't be enough to measure her pride. Amaka took her father's arm, and they walked together towards the car that awaited them, father and daughter, united by something no fortune can buy and no cruelty can destroy: unconditional love. Back at the hotel, the Monteros remained seated in the suite, unable to move. The silence between them was different from any other. It wasn't the arrogant silence they used as a weapon, nor the awkward silence they filled with criticism of others. It was the silence of people who finally saw themselves without the filters of money, status, and pride, and what they saw profoundly shamed them. The weeks that followed the meeting at the hotel transformed each person involved in ways no one would have predicted, as if the truth, once spoken aloud, had the power to demolish walls that seemed eternal and sow life where only rubble had been before. Amaka was the first to be reborn, and she did so in the most silent and powerful way possible, choosing exactly the life she wanted, without asking anyone for permission. She moved into an apartment she found herself after weeks of searching. It wasn't the mansion her father could have bought her with a single signature, nor the penthouse any magnate's daughter would choose. It was a bright space in a quiet neighborhood, with large windows through which the morning sun streamed, and a small terrace where she began to cultivate plants. Jasmines, basil, lavender. Plants that filled the air with aromas the Montero estate, with all its opulence, never possessed. "I don't want to live like the Monteros," she told her father when he, with the best intention, suggested something bigger and safer. "I want to live as myself, as the person Mama raised." Chief Obina looked at her for a long time before responding. "You are just like your mother, exactly alike." She also used to tell me that when I wanted to buy her things she didn't need, she'd say, "Obina, the size of a house doesn't measure the size of the happiness that fits inside. A small house full of love is a palace, and an empty palace devoid of love is a prison." Mama was wise, the wisest woman I have known, and you inherited every drop of that wisdom, along with your stubbornness, I must add. Amaka smiled, and in that smile, there was something that hadn't existed during her years with the Monteros, a peace that depended on no one but herself. The first important decision she made was to resume her professional career. Before marrying Kunle, she had studied business administration with a specialization in community empowerment at the University of Lagos, on scholarship earned through her own merits, not her father's money. She had dreamed of creating programs that connected the corporate world with communities that needed real opportunities, not disguised charity. Kunle had cut that dream short. "You don't need to work," he had told her, with that smile she mistook for love for so long. "I'll take care of everything. Your job is to be here with me, supporting me." The real translation of those words, which Amaka only understood years later: "Your job is to be invisible while I shine." Now, free from those invisible chains that weighed like iron, Amaka enrolled in a professional development program at the Central Business Institute. On the first day, she arrived early with a new notebook, comfortable shoes, and an energy that had been dormant for years, now suddenly awakening. First time here? A classmate named Chioma, with kind eyes, hands stained with ink because she drew in the margins of her notebooks, and a smile that harbored no ulterior motives, asked her. "First time in a long time," Amaka replied, resuming after a pause. After an entire life on pause. But the pause is over. Chioma didn't ask for more details. She didn't need to. She became the first real friend Amaka had in years. Not a friend like the wives of the Monteros' partners, who invited her to elegant lunches only to eye her up and down, criticize her shoes in hushed tones, and ask with feigned innocence, "And your dress? Dear, what brand is it?" A true friend who shared notes, who waited for her for lunch, who laughed with her instead of at her. Weeks later, as they studied together in a local cafe, where the coffee cost a fraction of what it did in the places the Monteros frequented, but tasted infinitely better, Amaka said something Chioma would remember forever. "You know what the best part of starting over is? This time, I know exactly who I am. I don't need anyone to define it for me. Not a husband, not a mother-in-law, not a family name. I am Amaka. And it turns out, Amaka is enough." "You always were," Chioma replied. "You just needed someone not to tell you, but to let you discover it yourself." While Amaka built her new life brick by brick, the changes in the Montero world were equally profound, though infinitely more painful. Because it is easier to build something new than to repair something you broke with your own hands. Chief Obina Obi negotiated a firm but fair agreement with Chief Segun. Meridian Investments would maintain its participation in the Montero conglomerate's projects under strict conditions. Total financial transparency, increased wages for employees at all levels, creation of a genuine social responsibility program, and zero tolerance for any form of discrimination within the company. "It's not charity or punishment," Chief Obina told Chief Segun during the last negotiation session. "It's sound business sense. Companies that treat their people well are the ones that survive for decades. Those that treat people as disposable end up being discarded themselves. History is full of empires that fell not due to external enemies, but due to internal rot." Chief Segun accepted every condition. Not only because he had no alternative, which he truly didn't, but because something had changed within him. The night of the meeting with Amaka, something he couldn't explain with business logic, but that he felt with a clarity that frightened him. Genuine shame. And shame, when it's real, can be the most powerful engine of change that exists. The changes in the company were gradual, but visible. A corporate welfare program was implemented that included flexible hours for parents, subsidized medical care, and an educational scholarship fund for employees' children. And in a meeting that left all personnel in absolute silence, Chief Segun stood before hundreds of workers and said something many had to hear twice to believe. For years, this company focused on growing outward and forgot to grow inward. We measured success in profits and forgot to measure it in dignity. That changes today. Every person here, from reception to the boardroom, deserves to be treated with respect, not because it's good for business, which it is, but because it's the right thing to do. And I took too long to understand that. The murmurs that swept through the auditorium said more than any satisfaction survey. Some employees looked at each other in disbelief. Others, especially those who had been invisible for years, like the cleaning and security staff, felt that for the first time, someone truly saw them. "Where did all this come from?" a manager later asked Chief Segun privately. "From a lesson that cost me almost everything to learn," he replied without giving further details. "And from a woman who had the generosity to teach it to me when I didn't even deserve to be spoken to." Mama Ayo experienced perhaps the most unexpected transformation of all. The woman who had built her entire identity on the wall of social status saw that wall crumble and discovered with astonishment and terror that behind the wall was nothing but emptiness. Decades of emptiness she had filled with coral beads, with elegant dinners, with cruelty towards people she considered inferior to feel superior. She did something no one expected, and which she herself would not have believed possible weeks earlier. She visited a community soup kitchen in one of the city's most vulnerable areas. She went alone, without a driver, unannounced, without wearing designer clothes or jewelry. Just her, walking through streets she had never trod, entering a building that smelled of hot soup and unfiltered humanity. What she saw there shattered her worldview. Mothers feeding their children with the same devotion with which she had fed hers, but without the resources she always had. Elders who ate their only hot meal of the day with a gratitude that wrung her heart. Volunteers who worked hours without receiving anything in return, except the satisfaction of knowing that someone would have dinner that night thanks to them. "They are like us," she told Chief Segun that night, sitting on the edge of the bed, still in her clothes, her gaze lost somewhere between the wall and her own conscience. "They love their children just like me. They dream of a better future just like me. They just had less luck. And we, instead of lending a hand, stepped on them to feel taller." She began to volunteer regularly, at first clumsily, like someone learning a new language in old age. She didn't know how to serve food without spilling. She didn't know how to talk to people whose lives were so different from hers. But she persevered, and in that persistence, she discovered something that surprised her to tears, that helping others filled a space within her that decades of luxuries had never been able to fill. One day, while distributing plates in the kitchen, an elderly woman with hands wrinkled from a life of labor gently took her wrist and said, "Thank you, Ma. May God bless your generous heart." Mama Ayo had to excuse herself and walk to the bathroom to cry, because in all her life, surrounded by people who flattered her for her money, who complimented her on her coral bead necklace, who envied her mansion, no one had thanked her with such sincerity as that elderly woman who had nothing material, but who had something Mama Ayo had just discovered she desperately needed: the ability to see goodness where others only saw appearances. Tola, for her part, did something her old self would have considered unthinkable. She called Amaka. "Amaka, it's Tola." The silence on the other end was brief but loaded with history. "Hello, Tola. I needed to tell you something that's been keeping me awake. All those horrible things I said to you for years, the time I mocked your dress in front of all the guests at the Christmas party, the time I said out loud that you smelled of the kitchen in front of Mama's friends, the time I hid your shoes before an important event, so you'd be late, and Kunle would get angry with you. The time I told a friend, knowing you could overhear me, that my brother married you out of pity. I remember every one, Tola," Amaka replied, in a firm voice, but without venom. "I know. And I want you to know that none of those cruelties were about you. They were about me, about my insecurity, about my emptiness. You were effortlessly authentic, kindly, strong, without needing to crush others. And I didn't know how to be any of those things. So instead of learning from you, I attacked you because it was easier than looking in the mirror. And now have you looked in the mirror? Yes, and I didn't like what I saw, but I'm working on changing that. I've enrolled in an interior design program. It's something I've always been passionate about but never pursued because Mama said it wasn't worthy of the Montero name. Talent doesn't care about family names, Tola. If you're passionate about it, do it with all your heart." Amaka: "Yes, thank you for taking my call. I didn't deserve it." Everyone deserves the opportunity to be better than they were yesterday. That's what I choose to believe. And if I stop believing it, then all I suffered will have been for nothing. That phrase was etched into Tola's memory. And every time the old arrogance tried to return, every time she felt tempted to judge someone by their appearance, she remembered it like a beacon guiding her back to the right path. But it was Kunle's transformation that was the most profound, the most silent, and the most devastating. The man who had let Amaka go without a fight, without even looking her in the eyes as she signed the end of their marriage, now faced the true meaning of loss. Not the loss of a wife who organized his schedule or accompanied him to events like a pretty accessory. The loss of the only person in his entire life who had loved him for who he was, beneath the suit, the expensive watch, the family name, the imported car. Amaka had loved him when he was cruel. She had waited for him when he was late. She had forgiven him when he didn't even apologize. She had looked at him with hope when he only returned indifference. And he had let all that die slowly, day by day, with every complicit silence, with every undefended insult, with every night he chose to be anywhere but by her side. Weeks after the meeting, he sat in a common cafe, one of those places where people go to think and not to be seen. And he pulled out the few photos he had of Amaka on his phone. Photos he had never posted on social media because his friends would have commented that his wife didn't fit into his world of luxury and appearances. Amaka, laughing while cooking something that smelled of home. Amaka, reading in the garden with the sunset, light painting her face golden. Amaka, looking at him with that mixture of love and sadness that he never knew how to interpret, but which he now understood with a clarity that shattered him. She loved him deeply, but she already knew he didn't deserve her, and she stayed anyway, waiting for a miracle that never came. It took him days to write the letter. Not a digital message that could be erased with a finger. A handwritten letter on paper with ink that ran in places where tears fell, unbidden. The final version read, "Amaka, I am not writing to ask you to come back. I lost that right a long time ago. Probably the first day I didn't defend you when my mother insulted you, and I looked away. I am writing because I need there to be, somewhere in the world, a record of my repentance. Not for you to forgive me. You already did that, and it's more than I deserve. But so you know that the lesson you gave me with your dignity, with your brave silence, with your ability to forgive someone who didn't earn it, changed something within me that I believed was impossible to move. You taught me that a person's true worth is not counted in money or measured by family names. It is measured by how they love when they receive nothing in return. And you loved that way every day, unconditionally, and I was too blind, too cowardly, too Montero to see it. That will live with me forever. Not as punishment, but as a reminder that I never again want to be the man who let go of the best thing that ever happened to him." The letter arrived at Amaka's apartment one afternoon when the light streaming through the window made everything seem more real. She read it sitting in her favorite armchair, the one she bought from a second-hand market that was more comfortable than any imported sofa from the Montero estate. She cried as she read it, not from sadness, nor joy, nor resentment. She cried for the sad beauty of things that arrived too late, for the love she offered with open hands and which he received with closed eyes, for what could have been if the Monteros had measured the world with their hearts instead of their wallets. She did not reply to the letter. It was not necessary. Some stories don't need a neat ending. They simply need each person to keep walking forward, carrying the lessons, and leaving behind the weight that no longer belongs to them. Amaka completed her professional program with honors, being recognized as the best in her generation. With her father's mentorship, not his money or his name, she developed the project she had dreamed of for years. A program that connected established businesses with entrepreneurs from vulnerable communities, creating real opportunities for growth. "I'll call it the Bridge Initiative," she told Chief Obina during a dinner at her apartment, where she cooked the jollof rice recipe her mother had taught her, and which always filled the house with an aroma that smelled of love. "Because I want to build bridges between worlds that believe they are separated by walls, when in reality, they are only separated by prejudice." "I love the name," Chief Obina replied. "And the best part is that it doesn't need my family name to work. It just needs someone who has walked on both sides of the bridge, and that person, my child, is you." The Bridge Initiative was presented at a business conference that brought together leaders from multiple sectors. Amaka walked onto the stage with a pounding heart, but a firm voice, recalling her mother's words. "Courage is not the absence of fear. It is acting despite it. My name is Amaka Obi," she began, looking at an auditorium full of expensive suits and professional expressions. "And I want to tell you a story, the story of a woman who was judged by appearances, humiliated by her background, and discarded as if her existence were a mistake that needed correcting. That woman is me. The silence in the auditorium was so profound that one could hear the hum of the stage lights. But this story is not about victimhood. It's about transforming pain into purpose. I learned the hard way that we live in a world that measures people with the wrong yardstick. We measure by family names, by bank accounts, by the brand of a watch, by the neighborhood we live in. And while we are busy measuring those things, we miss the only thing that truly matters: character, integrity, the ability to love without asking for anything in return. The Bridge Initiative is born from that conviction, that when we stop judging and start connecting, when we stop looking down and start looking into each other's eyes, extraordinary things happen. That an entrepreneur in a humble neighborhood can have the idea that changes an entire industry, that a working mother who never had opportunities can be the next leader we all need. That talent has no postcode, no family name, and definitely no price. The ovation was immediate, profound, and prolonged. It was not the polite applause of corporate events. It was the applause of people who had just heard a truth they needed to hear. In the following weeks, dozens of companies requested to participate in the Bridge Initiative. The first to officially enroll was the Montero conglomerate. Chief Segun signed the agreement personally, in an act that was both strategic and deeply symbolic. When a journalist asked him why a company of his stature was joining a program created by a woman relatively unknown to the public, he replied with words that were published by all media outlets. Because the most valuable lessons don't come from business books or graduate schools. They come from people who had the courage to tell us the truth when we only wanted to hear praise. And because it's time for companies like ours to demonstrate that true success isn't measured in profits, but in how many lives you touch for the better. The most touching surprise came later, during an ordinary meeting of the Bridge Initiative. Amaka was presenting progress to a group of participants when the conference room door softly opened and someone entered who made her heart stop for an instant. Mama Fei, the Monteros' housekeeper. The woman who, on the darkest night of Amaka's life, had taken her hand in the estate hallway and whispered the only kind words she heard that night. Not everyone in this house thinks alike. You were the only one who treated us like people, Mama Fei. Amaka approached, her eyes already bright. What are you doing here? I came because I heard about your program. Misus Amaka, Mama Fei said, with the shyness of someone who had spent her entire life asking permission to exist. My granddaughter. She has a special gift. She makes cakes that taste like heaven. Ma, she dreams of owning her own bakery someday. But we, you know how it is. We don't have the resources to give her that opportunity. Amaka took Mama Fei's hands in hers with the same delicacy with which Mama Fei had taken hers that terrible night. And in that simple circular gesture, a cycle closed that had begun with pain and ended with hope. Tell me everything about your granddaughter, Amaka said, with a smile that lit up not only her face but also the faces of everyone present who witnessed that moment. Because this was exactly what the Bridge Initiative meant. Not the big headlines, nor the gala photographs, nor the applauded speeches. This, a grandmother with unwavering faith in her granddaughter, finally connected with the tools to make a dream come true that would otherwise die silently in a neighborhood where dreams die every day for lack of someone who believes in them. Chief Obina watched the scene from a corner of the room. Barrister Ngozi beside him discreetly offered him a cloth handkerchief. Are you crying, Chief Obi? It's allergies, Chief Obina replied, wiping his eyes with all the dignity a man of his stature could muster while weeping like a child. Of course, it's allergies. Barrister Ngozi smiled, putting away her own handkerchief, which was also damp. One quiet afternoon, as the city was painted with the colors of sunset, Amaka visited a place she hadn't been to in a long time, the small family memorial garden where her mother's remains rested. She walked between the rows of plaques until she found the one she was looking for. She knelt, carefully placed fresh flowers, and let the words flow like a river finally finding its course. Mama, I did it, she whispered. Not as I imagined. Nothing turned out as I imagined, but I did it. I found my way not through Papa's money, nor anyone's family name, nor the arm of a husband who never truly saw me. I found it by being who you taught me to be. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves of nearby trees, and Amaka swore the air smelled of jasmines, her mother's favorite flowers. They humiliated me, Mama. They made me feel invisible, that I didn't deserve to sit at their table, that all I was good for was washing floors. They served champagne to celebrate my leaving their lives, and every laugh that night cut my soul. Tears fell on the fresh flowers, watering them with something deeper than water. But every time I wanted to give up, every time I felt the pain was greater than me, I remembered what you used to tell me when I was a child, and came home crying from school because someone mocked me for not having the things others had. You would sit with me, wipe my tears, and tell me that phrase that became my shield, my armor, my reason to keep going. Amaka closed her eyes, and her mother's voice resonated in her memory with a clarity that defied time. Dignity is not something others give or take away from you, my child. Dignity lives within you, and only you decide if it shines or fades. She opened her eyes and smiled through her tears. My dignity never faded, Mama, not for a single day. Not in the darkest nights. Not when I felt most alone. It shone, even when no one saw it. It shone because you lit it with your love, with your example, with your hands that were always there to lift me up. She remained in silence for a long time, letting the peace of the place envelop her like the embrace she could no longer receive physically, but felt with every fiber of her being. This is just the beginning, Mama, she promised as she stood up, wiping her cheeks with the back of her hand. And every step I take, every bridge I build, every hand I extend, I will do it carrying you with me always. She walked towards the exit of the memorial garden with a firm step, and on that path, she definitively left behind the woman who once sat in silence while being insulted, while being served champagne of humiliation, while being told that all she was good for was washing floors. The woman who now walked towards the sunset light was different, not because she had more money or more power or more connections, but because she had finally chosen to be herself completely, unfiltered, unapologetically, without asking for permission. Not as Chief Obina Obi's daughter, though she was, and carried that with pride. Not as Kunle Montero's ex-wife, because that chapter was locked shut, but as Amaka, simply Amaka, the woman who was humiliated in front of everyone while signing the end of her marriage. The woman who heard the clinking of champagne glasses celebrating her contempt. The woman who walked down a hallway of cruel laughter with her head held high and her heart broken, but never surrendered. But also, the woman who forgave without forgetting, because she understood that forgiveness is not a gift to the one who hurt you, but an act of liberation for the one who was hurt. The woman who transformed the deepest pain into the highest purpose. The woman who built bridges where others built walls. The woman who demonstrated, through actions and not just words, that true power does not come from money, nor from a family name, nor from crystal chandeliers. It comes from character forged in life's darkest storms. Because in the end, the Monteros discovered something their wealth never taught them, and all their gold could never buy. That the most valuable person who ever sat at their table, the smartest, the most dignified, the strongest, was not the one with the most illustrious family name or the largest bank account. It was the one with the biggest heart. And that person was the same one they had despised, insulted, mocked, and discarded as if she were a mistake that needed to be erased. Amaka, the woman they believed was worthless, turned out to be worth more than everything they had combined, more than the estate with its chandeliers, more than Mama Ayo's coral beads, more than the Montero conglomerate's contracts, more than all the champagne glasses in the world. Because dignity cannot be bought with money, it is not inherited with a family name. It is not lost by sitting in the wrong chair in an elegant living room, while others laugh at you. Dignity is carried within, and it shines brighter, much brighter, precisely when someone tries to extinguish it.